Welcome to the new Chemist. We're glad you're listening. Feel free to download this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. Here on the new Chemist, we discuss chemistry, which simply put is the science of change, as well as careers, community, research, and COVID-19. We're happy you're tuning in. My guest today is Cray. Thanks for joining me today. It is good to hear from you. Just briefly, I'll inform my audience about you. Cray is a progressive MD, MBA candidate at Harvard Medical School and Harvard Business School. He started his undergraduate career at Georgia Institute of Technology and graduated with a 4.0 GPA. Currently, he is studying at Harvard University. Also, he is the co-founder of MediMent, a mentoring organization which pairs Harvard's medical school students with underrepresented pre-med students in Boston for mentorship. He has patented as well as he has assisted in medical device development. He currently serves as a researcher at Massachusetts General Hospital, has published, and is a colleague of mine. Please welcome Cray. Good day, Cray. Thanks for joining me.
Sure.
Welcome again to the new Chemist. Let's get started. What has been some of the most beneficial advice you have received?
All right, starting broad.
Yeah.
I'll also, I'll quickly just say, David, thanks so much for having me on. We go way back.
Yeah.
All the way to what year was that? Georgia Tech, I guess.
I think it was
2015.
Yeah, I think it was 2015.
14 even maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is so cool to stay connected. On a academic level and also just on a friendship level as well, and to keep tabs on each other is awesome, and I think that's a big part of what life's about in general. So
I agree. I agree.
Really appreciate you having me on, man.
No problem.
So starting super broad. So just life advice in general. What's some good advice I got? You're asking?
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind, thinking back to my Georgia Tech days, since we just talked about that. The first day of my senior design class, Professor James Rains comes on stage and puts up this slide, big pie chart on the slide for in front of this huge auditorium, hundreds of students, and clicks a button and it goes and it says, like 95%, fills in 95% of the pie chart. And it says, or actually, let me back up. He clicks it and it first says, like 4%. And it's the stuff that essentially is 4%.
Okay.
Then he clicks, sorry about that. Then he clicks the next little button, and another very small percentage pops up essentially, and it's the stuff that that you don't know, say another 5%. And then he clicks the button again, and the overwhelming majority of the pie chart, 90 whatever percent at that point, and it says the stuff that you don't know. And he said, as you're beginning senior design, this is a really key concept to keep in mind, not only for this project, but just life in general. It's all about exposure, right? There are just so many things we have no idea about. And to be honest, probably what both of us are going to devote our lives to, David, we probably haven't even, fully figured out yet.
Yeah,
we
I
probably
agree.
don't even know exactly what we're going to be doing when it's all said and done in 10, 20 years or whatever. And understanding that and just being curious and constantly reaching out and trying to get exposure in different worlds, different fields, is, I think one of the most important things and kind of big picture frameworks you can have.
I agree. Also, why did you choose medicine as a field to do your doctoral studies in? Why did you choose medicine? What made you choose it?
Oh man. So I could go on forever about this. I would say it's really about patient interaction, I think, is what drew me into it, because obviously, there's so many ways you can be involved in the healthcare field, and biomedicine and biotechnology. But really the only role and all of that actually, you know, and allows for direct patient contact and interaction is being a medical doctor. And, sitting across from a person, talking to them face to face about what they're going through, hearing their journey, and then stepping into their lives as, as a guide, kind of an expert guide on their journey to health, whether it be helping them through a rough patch with the disease, or resecting disease from their body in an operating room. Just that, one-to-one human interaction, helping another person, and using, I guess, expertise and experience to augment people's lives and help them live healthier, happier lives. Big picture is really what drew me to the field of medicine. There's a lot more, I guess, technical reasons you could say, just in terms of being in an operating room. There's no other place like an operating room that, I lose track of time. I mean, 3 hours could fly by, and I would think it's 15 minutes in there. I mean, just scrubbed in the zone, and kind of, just the privilege and honor of, operating and doing surgery on someone, and removing disease with your hands, then and there. And then just, you get the adrenaline rush, and you combine the technical skills, the hand-eye coordination, along with all the many years of training and knowledge and expertise, and physiology, anatomy, and just, it's such a holistic, and then also a hands-on career. And ultimately, that's what I want to do with my life, is operate in as a surgeon. So those are kind of the two main things I would say of why I ultimately chose medicine.
Yeah, that's very good, and I'm sure you do well in that field. So, I found out that you are co-founder for MediMent.
Yes, yeah, it's great.
So, what led you to do that? What led you to do that? To start that program?
It was relationships like me and you, man.
Yeah.
I'm a few steps ahead. At Georgia Tech at the time, I think I was maybe a senior. You were their freshman or sophomore.
Yeah.
And so I just I just get such I guess just such fulfillment out of mentoring and out of teaching people, and seeing their eyes light up, and have that aha moment, like I once did. It's almost like nostalgia, whenever you're able to get a point across, or help someone with the framework on how to live, time management, study habits, whatever it may be, going forward in these mentoring relationships. I really enjoyed them at Georgia Tech. I was working anywhere from like 20 to 30 hours a week, typically in some capacity, either tutoring or mentoring. And so back at Georgia Tech, I founded what's called GT-PAL, Georgia Tech Peer Assisted Learning, which essentially records or gives a platform for tutors to record concept videos and upload them. Basically, it's Khan Academy, but for more specific to Georgia Tech classes, and more interactive, so students can request certain videos, whether it be on a more mentoring concept, like, hey, how do I manage the study load, workload, or it can be technical physics concepts or whatever. And really enjoyed doing that. And when I got to Boston, first year at Harvard Med School, I realized there was an opportunity to kind of do the same thing. So it wasn't virtual, is a little bit different, but Harvard Med School is surrounded by so many undergrads and undergraduate colleges. It's one of the most concentrated places in the world of universities. So kind of knowing this, and I guess running into undergrads through different, whether it be some seminar, or even even just I actually ran into one on a bus to New York one time. The girl sitting next to me was a pre-med student. We got to talking. Those kinds of experiences really led me to, I guess, kind of bridge the gap between a lot of my classmates that were also very into mentoring like myself or tutoring and got that fulfillment. I think that's a natural kind of attitude to have as, someone going into medicine. So a lot of my classmates were also interested, and then a lot of undergrads were interested in the area to have a mentor at Harvard Med School. And so I didn't really do anything super revolutionary, but just set up a platform to connect a lot of these students, and people signed up with their interests and backgrounds. And then, we connected them based on kind of similar backgrounds, and that's how that started.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, bridging the gap is very important because it complements the people's success, especially later down. Also, what have been your long-standing, let's go and be more specific. What have been your long-standing interests in the field of science? What have been the long-standing interests for you specifically?
Long-standing interest in science.
Yes. What themes?
Tough to pick just one. And I just come back to the you don't know what you don't know kind of thing, right? Because when especially for people listening on different parts of the trajectory, if you're about to start undergrad, I was talking to some rising freshmen yesterday about a COVID research project, and or if you're about to start your PhD or in grad school. I mean, you just learn so much on the job, so to speak, right? And you find out about whether it be like fields or niches within science that you love and want to devote your life to. So it's in terms of kind of a big picture, long-standing interest. Thinking back to my time at Georgia Tech. It really was surgery. Kind of my main project was a device to keep patients warm during surgery, and because of that, I was in the OR constantly interfacing with surgeons, anesthesiologists, to create this prototype this medical device. And I would say that's continued. And now that I'm in med school, I continue to love the OR and am more involved now, and hope to devote my career to that. But again, I would just say it's like there's no way I could have known that I really loved the operating room, right? Until I actually kind of got involved with the project that just happened to include being in the OR as part of it, right? Like when I set out on this medical device project to find a better way to keep patients warm, I didn't know I was gonna stumble upon like my career passion of surgery, right? Wow. So if you haven't identified something yet, don't worry about it. Just invest in a project, in a system, and mentors around you, and you'll stumble upon it.
Yeah. Being at the right place at the right time, would you say so?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. So how do you maintain view of the bigger picture in your developing career and in your life in general, especially when you encounter challenges and obstacles as many people are facing currently? Yeah. How do you maintain view of the bigger picture in your career and in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think everyone's wired a little differently with how much they like to plan and organize and try and keep everything in control day to day versus kind of going with the flow, letting things unfold, seeing things a little more bigger picture. So there's kind of that spectrum. It's funny, for whatever reason, I've always been a little more on the bigger picture, just kind of let, fly by the seat of my pants into the spectrum. I think that's just how I like to operate. And so for me, what kind of helps me keep that in mind may becomes a little more naturally to me, but ultimately is just doing what gives me energy, right? And what I lose track of time doing, and then thinking about how I can optimize the rest of my life for that, right? So for me, medicine and surgery specifically is just such an amazing kind of nexus of a lot of the things I care about. So you have you have the innovation aspect in surgery and healthcare. You have that patient care aspect, interacting one-on-one, with it's almost kind of, harkens back to that teacher or mentor relationship like we were discussing earlier.
Yeah.
The Latin root of the word doctor actually means teach, or to teach. That's where the word originates from. And I think it makes so much sense, because at the end of the day, doctors are teachers. That's what we're called to do. We're called to teach our patients, empower them, and help them through whatever phase of life they're in, to live healthier. And so ultimately for me, that, surgery and medicine was an awesome opportunity to kind of combine my interests and the things that gave me energy. So bigger picture for me quickly became, okay, so how do I become a doctor? And, back in undergrad, there's some, and kind of with any, career path, there's going to be some things that you just have to do, right? You just have to check the boxes with certain things. So as a pre-med, taking the organic chemistry classes and the physics classes and all the biology classes and all this, I enjoyed them, but I wouldn't say, for example, organic chemistry wasn't the most exciting class for me to go to in the world, right? I didn't lose track of time in organic chemistry class. But that might be different for you, or I'm sure people listening, but,
Yeah.
The example, just to say, it's one of those things where it's like I was doing it for a good cause, right? I knew that in order to achieve my ultimate goal, and be a doctor and have that, special role and opportunity, this was part of it. And so, when I had to spend the long hours in the cubicles on the third floor of the library, it just, it was kind of easy to rationalize, because it was, that was a step in the process to get me to where, I knew I would be most fulfilled in life. And so once now, now I can extend the same mindset to med school. So now med school, whenever there's a phase where I'm slogging through, I mean, sometimes the hours get really, really long during clinical rotations, it's ultimately for a good cause. It's training me, and equipping me with the knowledge to save people's lives. Right. So it's a privilege, but it also is very serious and necessary to know this stuff. And again, the bigger picture, being a doctor and a surgeon, helped me power through those times and understand and appreciate them. Honestly, appreciate a lot of the tougher times and realize that they're necessary. So kind of having an idea of what fulfills you, how you're going to, set yourself up for success to basically devote your life to that many years down the road, and then putting yourself on that path. And then when things get tough on that path, knowing it's necessary and all for a good cause.
Yeah. And also going back to what you said, you initially said the origins of the word doctor is tied to teaching, correct? Or learning.
The Latin root of the word doctor, means teach.
Yes. So, and yes, and that's interesting, because I was listening to a discussion by one of the great musicians, Leonard Bernstein, and he made a critical point. He said, "When I teach, I learn, and when I learn, I teach." So I think those things are really tied and connected. And I think those are interesting, how they play and the dynamics, how they work together. So
it's so true, man.
Yeah, because along that same point, one of the ways I've been able to reinforce concepts for my personal development and personal growth, whether it be in organic chemistry or physical chemistry or biochemistry or whatever discipline of chemistry I'm working in, is through tutoring people, and that plays a large part, and it complements well.
So, you want to know on that note, you want to know the best preparation medium or modality I did, the single best for preparing for the MCAT.
Sure.
Was tutoring.
Okay. Wow.
Wasn't the prep books, wasn't the Kaplan cube, although I'm not saying those things are important. They are, and they have their place. But for me, that's when I really learned those concepts.
Okay.
Before I even started studying for the MCAT, you know, tutoring was such a big part of my life. That's when I really, you know, kind of made my foundation in those core science classes by teaching other people. That's how I really learned them.
Yeah.
So
that's very
yeah,
important.
yet another example.
Very important. So, Cray, how have you sought or found the right environment for you to thrive scientifically and intellectually? How did you find it, or how are you seeking it?
Yeah. So again, it's one of these catch-22s, right? It's not, because if you knew where to find it and knew how to find it, then it's like, you know, it wouldn't be challenging or hard. You wouldn't learn something along the way, right?
Yeah, it's true.
You know, but at the same time, you still need to find it. So
Yes.
it's like it's kind of this tough balance in catch-22. And ultimately, I think the way it's worked out for me is just investing in a project or a situation, something that has real world impact or value. And really, you know, if it piques your interest, really just doubling down on it, right? So, for example, back at Georgia Tech, I wasn't, you know, doing a bunch of different things, you know, all over the place with clubs or this and that extracurricular activity. I really just had a few main things. One was teaching, that, you know, we've talked a lot about already. And then one was medical device development. And then one was research. So those were my three things all throughout undergrad. And I had one research project my entire time throughout undergrad. And, you know, when I started it, I didn't really know how I was going to go. I kept, you know, I wasn't, you know, fully committed. It's kind of, you know, testing the waters, right? It's like the stuff you don't know, right? I didn't know if I was going to like research. So I had this opportunity. I'm giving it a chance. Few weeks in, you know, it starts to pick up. I really like it, and just bam, double down. I mean, spent so many hours in the lab. Really enjoyed my mentors and the project I worked on. Right. And through that is where I stumbled upon this very optimal environment for me. You know, the research lab I was involved in had neurosurgeons, you know, consulting for a lot of the projects. So I was interfacing with surgeons every day. You know, in the project I was working on also, you know, we were consulting with a lot of doctors and surgeons. And, you know, one of these surgeons ended up writing my rec letter one of my rec letters to med school. You know, I formed great relationships with these doctors. They're all at Emory, excuse me. And, you know, I went to the OR with them. I operated with them and just got so much exposure. And was a part of that environment, like you were saying, just such a, you know, just a great environment for learning and inspiration, and, you know, talking with people a couple steps ahead of me, mentoring people a couple steps before me, just starting research, that kind of thing. Right. So again, it wasn't, you know, that's one of those things where I end up kind of joining a lab to work on this neuroengineering project. And then fast forward, you know, I end up, you know, having this incredible relationship with a neurosurgeon at Emory, right? That was not something that I really could have ever projected or thought would happen, right? And so that's just a testament to you want to kind of have a few different lures out at any given time, right? You're testing the waters, and when something bites, when something catches your attention, man, you just go all in, right? And you can kind of back off on the other things so you're not spread thin, and just really double down on the things that are important to you and that pique your interest, because that's when they're really going to blossom, right? That's when you're going to kind of get those next level connections through those experiences and next level opportunities, right? If you're kind of half doing a bunch of things that sound cool, I mean, it might look good on paper, but you're not really fully invested enough into any single one of them to get kind of those 5% type opportunities, right? Or the random, you just happen to be in the lab when the neurosurgeon walks in and you start talking kind of opportunities, right? A lot of it's serendipity, but it's serendipity because you're doubling down on that opportunity and so invested, right? So that's finding those things, having those lures out in one bites, really going all in on that is I guess kind of the framework that I would encourage people to adopt.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good. Yeah, it's good to have a wide net and to be focused at the same time. So, what have been? I know you're still a budding medical doctor. But what have been your most effective and impactful ideas to date? What do you think? If you had to give a summation, or if someone has told you, I'm just curious, what have been your most impactful or most effective ideas to date? What do you think?
Yeah, so normally I feel like this question would be kind of tough for me, because I mean, for one, like you said, I'm a fourth year medical student, so how much impact people at all ages can definitely have a huge impact, but it's like I'm still learning the ropes basically, right? So I'm not out there pounding the pavement trying to do this like very impactful research or working with patients directly yet, right? But to answer your question, I've and I haven't updated you on this yet, David, actually. So back in March, when things were really picking up with the pandemic, and again, this is another one of those examples, kind of like just kind of stumbling upon something and then really doubling down. One of my classmates, essentially, so how do I sum it? One of my classmates is working with a nonprofit here in Boston, and they held a hackathon. And in the hackathon, they found that there was a lot of data for the pandemic, specifically policy data, right? So COVID policies, for example, the shelter-in-place orders, the non-essential business orders, those kind of, or closures, I should say. So those kinds of things, data on those policies was essentially non-existent, at a granular level, so at the county level. They have data on those things at the state level, but the state, it's just too low resolution, right? You at the state level, the counties are doing their own things, right? Like just because the governor says something doesn't mean the county's going to abide by it. So anyways, that was the motivation for the project. It's like, wow, there's this complete lack of data at the granular county level for these policies, and yet vaccine's going to take forever, right? It's still in testing. Vaccine's not going to be available for months. Medications, right? There's still no medication you can give to cure people of COVID, right? And even if there was, it's like you're going to have to go through clinical trials, right? So those pharmacological interventions to stop coronavirus, we knew were going to be very far out. So the only and most important things people were doing, and anyone in the world's doing, is these so-called non-pharmacological interventions, NPIs, like shelter in place, social distancing, masks, right? These are the policies. These are the actual interventions that are stopping spread around our country and around the world. And yet we don't have data on it, right? So it was kind of a, I guess, surprising finding out of this hackathon. But long story short, that's a project I got involved in to try and remedy that situation and fill that gap. How can we innovate, I guess, ways to get this data, because it's so granular, it's really hard to get. It's not state level data where you can just code an AI bot to go comb through the internet and grab the data for you. You can't automate data collection whenever it's so granular like this at the county level. And so it was a big team effort. I really enjoyed, trying to solve this problem that could potentially have real world impact if we did, right? And so I doubled down, and it became almost a full-time job for me these past 3 to 4 months. And the quick summary, the form it took was, we ended up doing a novel crowdsourcing method. It was all volunteer based, and it was incredible to see just hundreds of volunteers around the nation that have volunteered their time to do data entry and get this data on these counties. So I've been leading this huge crowdsourcing effort that ultimately we're now at over 1,000, with data over 1,000 counties. It's by far the largest data set of its kind, and researchers around the country are now using this data set to, for predictive modeling and to inform policy decisions. And so it's, to actually see this product, this data set being used has been incredibly rewarding, and made kind of all the hard work and many times of confusion over the past few months worth it. And that's what I say my most impactful project is to date. This summer has been absolutely incredible. And excitingly, last thing I'll say is the Department of Health and Human Services actually reached out to us and essentially asked if the government could take this data set and post it on their COVID-19 data hub, so the entire nation and internationally, researchers as well can use this data set now. And being endorsed by the federal government, I guess was a total pipe dream 3-4 months ago. But because I was in the system, had a great group, and doubled down on something that I really enjoyed doing, it was a challenge. It really blossomed, and now it's having a lot of impact. So, long-winded way of answering your question. Sorry about that, but I just wanted to have all the details, not only for the podcast, but also just to fill you in. That's what's been keeping me so busy lately. So.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. So my last question for you, what keeps you going and what keeps you encouraged and motivated amidst all the challenges that people are facing and you probably have faced as well? What keeps you going and what keeps you motivated?
Oh man.
You can name one thing. You don't have to name all. You can name like one thing.
Yeah. One thing I'll say, and maybe this is yet another reason, it keeps coming back to this, but another reason I just love, mentoring, tutoring, that world so much is, you're just, it's like I'm indebted to so many people that played that mentor role for me, right,
Mm-hmm.
over the years, even all the way back in high school, especially college. A medical student at Emory, Kyle Pate, took me under his wing my sophomore year. And I can honestly say, if it weren't for him, I would definitely not be here. I would maybe be, I don't even know if I would have stayed with biomedical engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I would have transitioned out of the pre-med route. I don't know, right? But it's people like that all throughout my life. The neurosurgeon I talked about from Emory and lab, and many other people along the way that have just poured into me, and also including my family and my parents. I guess everything adds up and kind of culminates to motivate me to pay it forward, so to speak. And so looking for ways to do that is really fulfilling, and honestly, I think partly my duty. I think as humans we're wired to work and do useful work, and that's it's good for mental health. It's how it's meant to be, staying constructive. So all those things combined and paying it forward, kind of having that attitude, I think is one of the big things that keeps me motivated.
Oh, that's very good. It's very timely. Very timely. So thank you again, Cray, for joining me. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, David, so good catching up.
Thanks for listening. We're glad you were able to tune into this podcast. Once again, this is The New Chemist, where we discuss chemistry, which simply put is the science of change, as well as the other sciences, careers, community, research, and COVID-19. Thanks again for listening. Note, the views on this podcast represent those of my guests and I.